as a kid, you saw what entrepreneurship looked like and saw successes and failures.
So I feel like don't try to spend so much time, like it has to be this perfect idea. Just like figure out how to get it made. Can you sell it? And if you can, then maybe do a little bit more research and then kind of go down that way. Once I tried, I was like, okay, this is the one. Even though I had nobody try yet, I was like, this feels like the one to me. And it ended up being the one.
It ended up being the one. All right, I am here today with the lip balm king himself, Kobe Harris. It's good to have you here.
Thank you. I appreciate you having me on.
I think that your story is so interesting, getting to know you over the last couple of months. And, me coming from the Amazon space, knowing nothing about direct-to-consumer and Facebook, and that's like your world. And we can talk about different sides of e-commerce, which is so cool. But getting to know you, I kind of want to start by uncovering your story a little bit, because if people haven't heard of the Lip Balm King, obviously he's right here with me, but you're the CEO of Kobe's Co. How old are you?
I'm 24 years old.
24 years old. And to not give away exact numbers, fair to say you'll do millions of dollars
in sales, yes,
this year.
Yes, correct.
At 24 years old.
Yes.
That's already like a clap yourself on the back kind of moment right there, because I think about the average 24-year-old, and I remember when I was 24, to say I was doing hundreds of thousands would have been like beyond imagination, and you're doing millions. And it's not, I also want to point out, this is not millions of a brand that you're reselling. This is your brand that you own, which is a very unique thing, because there's a lot of people that do millions of sales of someone else's brand and then say, well, how much are you making on that? How much do you own of that? Say, oh, I don't own any of it at all. So the distinction between reselling versus you owning your brand in the first place. Mission-focused, direct-to-consumer lip balm.
Correct.
That's how I would define
that
what
sounds
you are.
just about right. Yeah,
is that fair?
That sounds
fair
spot on. Yeah, 100%.
Okay. And I think the for people who are out there understanding, this is not just chapstick. This is handmade, sustainable, and generally a better product. I've tried it as well. And I was at your manufacturing operation this morning, which was really cool to see, because you're not one of those brands that is white labeling this stuff, making it in Malaysia, importing it in here. You are making this all yourself right here in Las Vegas.
100%.
Which is so cool to see. So tell me, how did you get started in this in the first place?
Everybody asks me this question all the time, and I feel like I never really have a good answer for this. But so I was doing, it was really just kind of an idea with a group of friends, like in college, actually. So I had wanted to formulate like a lotion or chapstick with one buddies down the hall. And it was a couple of weeks before, the end of freshman year had let out. So week of, coming up to week of finals, I had started doing like some preliminary research on like packaging and bees at university. I was at Loyola Chicago at the time. I wanted to open like a rooftop, like a beehive type of thing, like an urban, like an urban bee center, because obviously you can get your beeswax from local or commercial scale bee farms, or if you go out to somewhere like Wisconsin, somebody just might have a big farm or a field where they keep bees, or some people keep them in the back of their houses. But obviously living in the city, you couldn't really do that. We don't really have like a yard or a garden or house.
You grew up out there?
I did not. I grew up in Wisconsin.
In Wisconsin,
yes, correct. Okay. So I was born in Michigan, moved to Maryland. That's where my sister was born. Then Baltimore, Pennsylvania, then Wisconsin, and then grew up in Wisconsin. Went to college in Chicago.
Got the whole tour of the East Coast, Central America, and then came out here.
Yeah, exactly.
To Vegas for the first place.
We'll get to that.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Okay. So you had a buddy of yours that you wanted to make like lotion or lip balm with. Whose idea was this? Like, where did this come from?
Random. Being young, just like I want to try to sell something. Let's try to make something. We're bored in our dorms. We're drinking at night, or we're going out doing whatever. Like, we got all this free time outside of being in class, but you can only study for so much of your time. So figured, why not try something a little bit different.
Yeah. Let's set the stage on this. So this is what year when the idea comes to you of like, hey, let's mess around and make some lotion or some lip balm or something?
2019.
2019. So pre-pandemic.
Yep.
You're just in school in Chicago and a little bit bored, drinking and thinking, oh, lip balm.
Yeah. There was really no rhyme or reason. It's not like I did. It was like, how did you, decide on, eco-friendly lip balm? Like, what research were you doing? I wasn't doing any. Like,
okay. Yeah. So that's strange, because it's like, were you a chapstick user at that point?
A little bit. My dad had always made me use like, Carmex or Blistex, whatever, and it just was, my lips were dry as a child, and just like I feel like any others, but it wasn't just like this. My lips are extremely dry, or like I wanted to cure chapped lips. Obviously, I do want to now, alongside of the mission that we're trying to build at Kobe's. But it was more of a small product, something that we can manufacture pretty easily and simply, probably in our dorm room. It takes not limited knowledge, but I mean, it's a little bit more focused and something that we know we could achieve, like, while being here with limited funds. Because at the time I was broke college and I didn't have any money.
Broke in college.
Yeah.
And I want to dig into being broke and building all of this too. But I think for a lot of people who get random inspiration, they do things like they watch Shark Tank and they go, oh man, I should invent something. I should come up with something too. You're just drinking in college and coming up with business ideas, not playing video games. It's like, let's make some chapstick instead, which is distinct. Why are you that way? Like, what was going on? And are you still working with this other guy today?
No, we are not, actually.
Okay.
No. But I don't know. I feel like I've always been kind of like, once I like something or want to focus on something, I kind of like go all in on it. And going back to your point of Shark Tank, I used to watch Shark Tank all the time growing up, and you see the most random products on Shark Tank. Yeah. And it's like, why didn't I think of that? Or this is so simple. Like, this almost seems stupid, and they're making a ton of money. Yeah. So I feel like, don't try to spend so much time, like it has to be this perfect idea. Just like figure out how to get it made. Can you sell it? And if you can, then maybe do a little bit more research and then kind of go down that way. You don't have to put so much pressure on trying to build this huge thing from the ground up. And that's kind of how I saw it as. I was like, I can make a cool lip balm, and if it works, it works. If it doesn't, I'm not really losing anything here. I get the skills to gain to try to build a business or build a product, sell a product. And that's kind of how I think about things. I try to think about them as more like a learning experience than really something that you fail or succeed at, type of thing, I guess.
Sure. And your lip balm, I've seen a lot of your ads. I don't know why they're targeting me, but whatever it is working, right? So I know you've got 4 main ingredients that you put into your lip balm. Is that where you started in the dorm room with those ingredients, and you just iterated to a different percentage going into it now, or is this way off the wall from where you started?
It was a little bit different off the wall. So once I initially got that first idea, we came up with the name like another night later, and just hanging out with some friends in the room. They were like, you should call it Kobe's. Thought it was amazing. Woke up the next day and started designing logos and labels. And like I said, it was the end of our freshman year. So my mom moved out to Vegas, and she's still out here the beginning of my freshman year of college. So I lived out there in the summer. So I went to my mom and was like, hey, I got this idea it's called Kobe's. It's lip balm. And I went on Amazon, researched a bunch of different lip balm and chapstick companies, saw the ingredients that they were putting inside. How could I form on my own? Started researching how the ingredients work for your skin, and what they generally did. And went on Amazon again, and just like, I was like, Mom, can I just get like $150, $200? And I just want to buy these ingredients and try to do some little experimenting. And she had started the business when she was younger, or when we were really younger, and she had like a nail hair salon when we lived, I think it was in Baltimore.
Okay. How old were you when she had that?
Oh, like less than 10, I think. Cool. Yeah, probably 5 or 6. I remember like sometimes still like sitting in the chairs when she had like people coming in playing on their phones and stuff, but she was always in there working. And she had always said, she had to shut it down because my dad moved around from jobs. He worked at Harley. He was in, manufacturing. So he had to bop around us when we moved around so much. And she had always said, I wish I would have been able to keep the salon and see where I was able to take it, type of thing. And unfortunately, I didn't think to do that. So if you got an idea for something, I want to try to be able to help you and support you. And that support has allowed me to kind of do some cool things. I think I've kind of deviated from the question. But
well, it's fine, though, because I think it's important to note out that as a kid, you saw what entrepreneurship looked like and saw successes and failures. But you had a desire to kind of jump into this yourself. And now you're coming to your mom and being like, hey, I'm a broke college student. I need $200.
Yep.
I want to buy a bunch of chapstick.
Yep.
And she's like, okay, yeah, that makes sense. Let's do this, right?
Pretty much. Yeah. She did not think it was crazy at all. So I got the ingredients and really sat on my bedroom floor in my mom's house, just mixing wax. And I had a little hot plate, a little steel double boiler. I still got pictures of that today. And I remember I whipped up my first, little chapstick tube, and it was with none of the ingredients that we use today, maybe minus the beeswax. And then it was in a plastic tube with a Kobe's logo that looked a lot like Burt's Bees. And I was like, this can't work. I mean, I just wanted to get some initial feedback on the formula and the test, and then, kind of iterate later. And I worked as a lifeguard that summer, actually. So, you're around thousands of people every day that just were walking in and out. So I spent most of that summer, that next 2.5 months, kind of formulating, getting down to something that I feel like I could maybe use on a regular basis. And then I had a buddy, one of my good friends still to this day, who he lives out here in Vegas. His name was Marvin. We would eat lunch together every day, go up to my car, chill before we go back into work. And I told him about it. I was like, hey, Marv, I got this idea. It's called Kobe's. It's like a lip balm. I had brought him like 2 tubes. I was like, try this, give me some feedback. He's like, damn, man, this is really good. Like, you should bring it up to everybody. I was like, oh, yeah, okay, why not? So I went home that night, made like 30 tubes, passed it out to all the employees that next day. Just kept getting more feedback. And then I only had like 2 more weeks left before I had to go back to Chicago for fall semester. But I just kept bringing bags of chapstick every day and was just handing it out to people, just so I can get some initial feedback on the formula.
Is that when you knew maybe there's a business here? When you started getting that feedback?
Not really, because I still didn't know what I was doing. I mean, I got a decent formula, but that was it. So I just knew I had to do a little bit more iteration on, because I knew this wasn't going to be the final form of packaging. And there was a few problems with how it went on the lips. It still melted a little bit too much. It wasn't firm. So I was like, there's some good that comes out of here, and I know I've made a lot of progress since the initial idea came up, and it was cool to see like a finished product that other people were using, but I knew I still had a little bit to go. So when I went back to Chicago back in the fall, I got in touch with one of my environmental science professors. Their name was Sasha Adkins, and I was kind of at not of a standstill, but it was like, just getting back into the flow of things with school. I wanted to pick back up the research because I know I had said I was trying to open a beehive on campus. That didn't actually happen. They wouldn't let me do that.
Yeah.
So I went to her and I was like, hey, I got this idea for a lip balm. I know she had ran part of like the research center with the environmental stuff. So I was like, hey, can I do some research on like, bees and then environmental types of packaging that I could potentially use for the lip balm, just so I can give me a little bit of creative space. It forced me to like a lot time to actually go and research and do whatever I needed to do. So when I had first met with her, she was a huge no plastics person. She didn't have any in her office, none in her home, and she just tried to educate people on trying to live life without plastic, or just being generally greener.
Sure.
Living in a city, you see a lot of trash in the streets, poor air quality you can see in Chicago. So she wanted to do things to fight that, and that's where a lot of the mission and the ethos around Kobe's kind of came about.
That's so interesting, because I just came from Chicago a couple weeks ago,
Mm-hmm.
and I went on one of those architecture tours,
Mm-hmm.
and they talk about what the Chicago River looked like
Mm-hmm.
in the early 1900s, and how everybody was dumping stuff into that.
Mm-hmm.
And so you being exposed to an environment where you're around a professor and an educator who is coming from an area where there's an experience of what used to be terrible, there's now a plan for 2030 for you to make that water swimmable.
Mm-hmm.
When people won't even go near it right now because it's how nasty, like what's been inside that water.
Right.
So the inspiration that comes from that, I think is certainly interesting that it comes from Chicago,
Mm-hmm.
and that the sustainability side of it is from Chicago as well. I want to shift a little bit. Well, I want to go back to my question about when you knew you had a business before we shift.
Sure.
If it wasn't then when people were trying it and you still had issues, when did you know this is going to be a business?
Okay, so once I got back to school in the fall, spent that fall semester still formulating, finished the formula, I would say early second semester, sophomore year. So it's just 2020 now. And this was in like February. So I started, I had like the cardboard tubes that we use now, the final formula that we use now, some of the labels, made a few hundred and started to walk around campus to pass them out.
This is all before COVID hits then, when this happens.
Right about when it happens.
Okay,
so
gotcha.
A week after COVID hits, go home. I didn't really focus too much on the lip balm because, obviously, kind of a big change happened, have to move out of the dorms. And I just kind of wanted to focus on finishing up the semester of school. So once that ended, that summer was when I was like, okay, I think I can actually do something with this. Didn't have a job. Obviously, everything was still closed down. So I just started going on my phone every single day, trying to reach out to influencers, comment on other people's posts to like grow the Kobe's page. In doing that, I had met a couple influencers who were relatively big that posted about Kobe's. And it was during the Black Lives Matter movement as well. So that helped give me a lot of push because obviously I'm a Black founder. I'm a young African-American man. Male, and that helped a lot. So I think that summer we did like 30 grand in sales, and that was the most I had ever made in my entire life.
I bet. Yeah.
I never had more than, I don't know, $1,500 in my bank account, maybe at the most. And doing a day where I had made $10K in one day, well, we thought this was nuts. I was 20 years old, you know.
On lip balm.
Yeah.
10K of lip balm in a day.
Selling chapstick, you know what I mean? A $5 little tube. And I woke up one day, I had like 150 orders. That was probably the most I've ever had, like up until that point. And that
was from an influencer posting about your product.
Yeah.
So you had built out the infrastructure already at this point. Like you must have had a Shopify store or something like that was built up.
Yeah. So, I mean, I spent 3 hours one night drinking with one of my buddies, and I was like, hey, I'm gonna need help putting this website together. So we edited up some photos, made some copy, and within three hours we had the basic theme on Shopify with some of our inputted pictures, our edited little photos, and just threw it up there. So like it wasn't anything fancy.
But isn't that a funny point though? Because how many people are out there who are thinking about starting their Shopify store and getting started, and they're thinking about, I want the website to be this, I want it to be that. I don't know how long it's gonna take. I've never built a Shopify store before. You built yours in 3 hours because you had a need to get it done.
Yeah, 3 hours. Yeah, because my buddy was like, hey, I want to buy it. Like, and I was like, I don't have a website. Let me just put that together. So I was like, did it that night.
the inspiration that comes from that, because there's a lot of people that I think really overthink business. They get so tied up in the little intricacies of having everything perfect when it's really all about the fundamentals. Someone wants to buy what you have. You built something for them to do that, and Shopify existed to make that easy, but it wasn't complicated to do it. You just had to have a reason to do it.
Yeah, absolutely. Right? I 100% agree with that. I think it's kind of like that analysis paralysis. Like you think there's so many different options out there, and I still am at fault for this myself today. Like I do this a lot. Like there's so many different things that I can be doing, but you just have to really decide what is important. And especially for somebody that's just getting started, it's just like you might have a product that you want to sell. You need a place to sell it, and then just put those two and two together. Don't think about, get the LLC, the bank accounts, all that other stuff, like set up your taxes. No, I gotta pay all this. I gotta do this. No, you don't.
People will start tax planning before they've ever made a sale.
Yeah, and that's
like, I want to make sure I can write off this. And it's like, dude, you have no revenue.
Yeah, none.
Like, why are you focused on anything but getting revenue?
Yeah, none. Yeah,
That's the telltale sign of an amateur. Almost every single time, they're hyper focused on the little intricacies instead of the fundamentals that are there.
Agreed.
Okay, so you get to a point where you did 10K in a day of lip balm from influencer posting, and that's the moment that you realize I got something here.
Yeah, I mean, from being that age and seeing, talking to my parents about, how much they make, and obviously I wasn't doing this every single month, but just seeing the power of being able to sell online and being able to do $10,000 to $15,000 in sales in one single day, like that's a lot of money. And like if you figure out how you can make that a repeatable process or use another system to sell that many on a consistent basis, I mean, there's no bounds to what you can really do. And I think also me being a little bit naive as well, still being really, really young, and just like, I think this is going to last forever, but I know I can like go and figure it out, allowed me to just be like, okay, maybe I'll take a step back from school and try to focus on this. And it was kind of a culmination of a couple of things that made me stop school and, actually move out here to keep doing the Kobe's. One was meeting Andrew Sartoris, who we both met.
Yep.
When I moved out here that first summer, I was like, hey, I got this lip balm idea. I think this was actually like a year later, like the next summer.
What year? This is 2022?
2021.
2021.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I think I met him. We actually started talking because he was my neighbor at the time. And one of my other neighbors introduced me to him. And I was like, hey, Andrew, I got a couple thousand in sales. Like, can I just I know you grew a big company. You just had an exit. What are some things I should be thinking about to like grow this business to, maybe make $10,000 a month or $20,000 a month so I can kind of be consistent with it?
Yeah.
And he immediately just ripped off a ton of, actionable steps. He's like, hey, I'll help you. Like, do this, this, and this. And I've never had somebody just be like, so actionable about like what you can do and just so willing to help. Like, obviously you get like support from your parents and things, but it's really validating to be like, somebody else might see the value in what I'm doing and actually has done this before and is willing to kind of give me the advice and, know how to like potentially get to that space as well is really, really, really exciting. So I met him. Then it was COVID, so we were going to online school, and I remember that second semester of online school, nobody really got anything done. You're doing a lot of, I wouldn't say cheating, but you're just, working with other people, kind of doing the bare minimum.
Helping each other out.
Helping each other out. Perfect.
Okay.
Yeah. And then at the end of the summer, that was the day I had made that 10, 15K in one day. So I'm sitting there thinking, I'm like, if I can figure out how to keep doing this, then I can make a decent amount of money, or at least delay school for a little bit. If I had to go back, fine. But if I can figure this out, I think this would be a pretty cool thing. And I don't, I'm not trying to knock on school or anything. I think it's absolutely amazing. I think the value that you learn from being able to connect with people, being around other like-minded people your age is really second to none. So I would say continue. And I would say if COVID didn't happen, there's a good chance I would have never dropped out, and I would have just tried to figure this out while I'm in school. But it's just those combination of things that made me like, okay, let me stop and move out to
So
Vegas.
you get to be that quintessential college dropout, entrepreneur, founder. The story is good, but the professors would remind you that you came up with the idea while you were under their tutelage.
100%.
That's what they would say. So it was worth the education, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Well worth it.
Absolutely.
I do think that there's this moment where as entrepreneurs, like everybody kind of like, you see the light one day and you wake up and your perception about money changes, but you saw the light in two different ways, because that same summer in 2021, you got to meet Andrew Sartoris, who would eventually invest in your company, but you also saw the light about what it means to make $10,000 in a day. And when your perspective changes from people aspirationally wanting to make $10,000 a month or $100K a year, and that's the target everyone's trying to hit in their job, to you saying, well, shit, I just made that in a day. If I can do that in a day and I'm 21, like what could this look like at 30 on the back end of that? And I can see how that is that trigger of that summer being around a great entrepreneur like Andrew, who's been there, done that, giving you this guidance and his vision on top of what you had already built as well. And then you see that you can make 10K in a day. Let's shift a little bit and talk. These two topics kind of go hand in hand.
Sure.
Failure and the figure it out attitude of entrepreneurs. Let's go back to you making the formula when you got to the point that you realized this is going to be a business. How many iterations had you made to the product from the first time you tried it in your college dorm room to actually saying this is a legitimate business? Is this like Thomas Edison, 1,000 things not to do to make a light bulb, and then on the 1,001th, he figured it out?
Yeah, I mean, I think it was a combination of a lot of like testing a few things, using this as like a variable and just like adding this different ingredient, this different oil. So hundreds, probably a couple hundred.
Hundreds.
Yeah.
Hundreds.
Just, just in there on the double boiler, mixing some beeswax, and just documenting my little notebook. And I got all these notebooks, probably got like 10 now.
Yeah.
Just full of notes, like from when I first started all the way up until now. I just like keep a kind of stack of them so I can always look back. But yeah, just I test one, write down why I liked it, what it worked, what didn't, and then I just get a couple people to try it, and then I'd use that as a basis. And then after a point, after you're formulating for a while with that type of stuff, I just got to a point I was like, once I tried, I was like, okay, this is the one. Even though I had nobody try it yet, I was like, this feels like the one to me, and it ended up being the one.
It ended up being the one.
Yeah.
Yeah. But that was hundreds of times all the way through prior to that. So we're talking about years of trial and error and small iterations. And while maybe you weren't in a lab testing with data, I would argue that those notebooks that you had, that you putting your notes into, is subjective data that gets you to an objective standpoint that I have a good product that's here, and it came from years and years of research to make it happen. Did you get discouraged along the way when you kept trying things and you weren't getting the result that you were looking for?
Not particularly, because I still don't think I was thinking of this as like, I don't really have a true business right now. I think I'll still think I was in the mode of just like, I'm trying, I'm learning, I'm getting cool feedback. I get to talk to a lot of people who might like this product, might dislike this product. And I'm I would say I'm an introverted person, but at the same time, I like to chat with people and kind of like be out and about. So I'd say I'm a combination of both. And this kind of allowed me to do that. So I didn't really look at it as like, I'm just getting super discouraged because this is not working, because there was no downfall if it didn't work. Like I would just be back at where
were you not putting money into every single recipe, or is this a couple of bucks for each one that you're doing?
Yeah, I mean, it's less than a couple of bucks. I mean, you buy your bulk ingredients type of thing, and once you have a bunch of ingredients that you can test from, I mean, it's just let me take a few from here, a few from here, a few from there, and so it's not like I'm spending $20 every formula, $20, $50 every formula. I already have a lot of the base ingredients, and once I had all those, I could just replenish them. But it's just I'm sitting here making small batches of 4 to 5, so it's not like it's costing me a ton of money.
Yeah.
And I was really conservative with my money considering I didn't have any. At first, anyway. So
well, I think that makes a lot of sense. If it was cheaper, you could try a lot of different things, and you didn't have a business in mind that you were doing it. What was the passion that was moving you forward? Like you didn't start off as someone who was just super passionate about lip balm, but you got to the point that you were, I would say, becoming an addict almost of, I'm going to figure this out. I'm going to try this. Why not give up on that halfway through and say, you know what? This ain't for me. Because if I was going to figure it out, I would have figured it out by now.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'd say curiosity at some point. I just like to try things. And I mean, for me, and it's like when there's really no risk of, like if it fails, like, I mean, what is failure at this point? I just don't have a lip balm that I don't like. Like, is there a downside to that? Not necessarily, no. So I'm just going to keep going. And I just kind of I've invested so much time into it now that I kind of want to get to a point where I can maybe go to a farmer's market and sell this, or give this to somebody that I'm like, okay, this is something that I created. It has my name on it. It's Kobe. So obviously I want myself or the company to be represented in a good way. So I think that just kind of let me just keep trying. And I've always been really big into like science and experimenting and cooking. And
Sure, okay.
I think the combination of all that and then being able to see people's faces or get feedback from individuals from something that I had made was really insightful and kind of kept me moving forward. So combination of those things.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we all know that entrepreneurship and success is certainly not a linear path. Like there's ups and downs that come. But your ups and downs weren't coming in the product phase when you were making the product. Is there a failure that sticks out in your mind of one of those down periods that you had to navigate through in between making the product and getting yourself to where you're now scaling the business massively at this point? Is there one in particular that stands out in your mind?
I would say probably right now, or like soon after we moved into the first warehouse, like the first one that we just moved out of.
What year did you move into that one?
That was in 2021, so
Okay.
October 2021.
Okay,
I
gotcha.
believe. Yeah. Yep, October 2021.
Okay. And so what was the setback? What was the failure that took place there?
I would just say maybe moving in a little bit too quickly or trying to move too fast to try to do too much. I think we had a little bit of success over that summer. We had some decent growth. And we're not talking anything crazy here. I mean, $10,000, $20,000 a month. Okay. And I was like, okay, I'm doing everything out of my mom's garage, and she had her car in one half, and I was on the other side, so, manufacturing stuff in there. And I was just kind of getting exhausted of like being in the garage. It's really hot, and having really no help. Actually, I used some high school kids from the neighborhood. So if I had a big push of orders, I'd get a bunch of them to do labels for me at night. Like I'd send them off with a box. Like 4 or 5 girls would come down and grab a box and be like, okay, you get a certain amount per tube. So just go and finish these, bring them back when you're done. And then I'd have them come help me pack orders for, a couple hours out of a day. So that really helped. But I wanted something a little bit more consistent and a space to have of my own. So I got that warehouse, and at the time we still didn't have a ton of funds. We had a little bit saved up from our sales and things, but just we might not have had the demand that we necessarily needed. And it took me a while to really figure it out how to get that demand back, or really build a scalable business that I feel like I could have sat down and been more strategic around the data, how to grow, and just being smarter operationally. But that just comes with learning.
But is that because you had this initial success where you have the $10,000 day, but it wasn't from infrastructure that you built, it was borrowing somebody's audience?
Yeah.
And are you in this mindset of like, okay, I thought I had something there, but I got to go build this myself, so I do have those sustainable sales that come in?
Absolutely.
And that's where it's nice to have that figured out attitude, because if you're willing to do hundreds of iterations to get yourself to a workable product, business is just kind of the same thing. Where now hundreds of iterations to get yourself to a system or to get yourself to ad creative that works to go along with it.
Yeah, 100%.
We're going to take a quick break right here. And when we jump back in, we're going to talk through the investor mindset real quick, and then kind of talk through some things that I think a lot of people are struggling with. And I hope we have time to talk about Facebook ads too, because I know that is like your bread and butter.
Sure.
If not on this one, we'll get it on the next one,
Yeah,
and do something
absolutely.
just on Facebook too. But I like to talk more so the psychology, as opposed, like, we could always talk shop.
Mm-hmm.
We could talk technical side, me on Amazon, you on Facebook. But I think that people get a lot more out of the psychology of why did you win,
Mm-hmm.
you know, versus them wanting to win, but
Yeah.
not actually taking the steps to do that.
Sure.
So talk to me about incubators and investors. I think I remember from your story that when you were still in college, you did some type of an incubator type program. What did that look like to get into in the first place? And bring me back to what year that was as well.
This was 2021 going into 22. So this was the REI Navigate Accelerator Program. And actually a friend had sent me this and was like, hey, you know, REI starting this thing where they might be able to invest in founders. You get a grant. I think the grant at the time was like $25,000. And then they had the opportunity to invest after, and it was supposed to be a course so you could go through like 12 weeks. And they, you know, each week was focused on a specific thing. So it was like, you know, manufacturing or finding suppliers or supply chain, finance, marketing, you know, all the different little facets of business. It's supposed to give you help with like people inside of the REI organization that could use their context to help you get things that you needed, potentially get you into the REI store, and go about that way. So it was a 12-week program. It was cool. The people of REI are great. But I think an accelerator is not necessarily going to build your business. It's a good stepping stone. And I did take the investment from REI. It was more so because we did need the capital to kind of buy more inventory, do a little bit more expansion. But as like a partner, like I don't necessarily look at them as a partner. They just
Sure.
more of like I got the money from them and then I kind of go about my way type of thing. They're not like extremely helpful. They're more of a and no fault of their own. They're a retail brand,
Sure.
so they know retail sales. And when I ask questions about direct to consumer, when I have calls with them, it's like I feel like I'm explaining stuff to them when I feel like I should be asking questions so I can learn, not trying to teach them as well, because that's not really helping out the business.
Yeah,
in a
you're accelerating them
Yeah.
so that they can accelerate you.
Yeah, exactly.
On the back end of it.
Mhm, exactly.
But the money was helpful.
Yes.
And I think that a lot of people, when they're getting started, that cash flow crunch of needing to buy raw materials or needing to buy actual product before you actually get paid back from your customers, having capital is a vital part of this. Unless you've got some type of like awesome payment terms with suppliers, you don't pay them for 90 days after you get the stuff. Everybody has to have money there. So do you look at the REI Navigates program as something that was instrumental to your success, or do you see yourself figuring this out without that program being a part of the story?
I see myself figuring this part of the growth out. I probably could have got money from somebody else a little bit earlier if I really had wanted to. I just decided not to. I got the money from them. I was able to buy more inventory, but that still didn't help me grow the business. I mean, that's just having a little bit more free cash so I can actually do the things that's going to allow me to scale. So in that sense, yes. But I feel like if I wouldn't have taken the investment from them, it's not like, I think we'd probably still be in the same place.
Sure.
If I'm being honest, yeah.
And are they still actively invested in your company today, or have you bought them out at this point?
No, they're still in it, yeah.
Okay,
Eventually, I
gotcha.
would like to buy them out and just kind of have the equity for myself or distribute it to somebody who I think might be a little bit more influential in terms of helping me get to the stage that I want to get to.
Yeah.
But right now, I have no complaints about REI.
Sure.
Yeah.
What does the process look like to buy out someone who comes into your business so early on? Is that something that you can trigger whenever you want, or is it just a conversation that happens?
Yeah, it's just a conversation. I had brought it up to them a little bit ago. It's just like, what does that look like? And obviously, you just kind of go through an analysis to kind of see like where your business is actually worth at that time, and then whatever their business value, then we can set a price so you can effectively be bought out because they raise money on a safe. So,
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that with the safe, they're basically kind of giving you a loan, but it gives them protections and a board seat that comes along with that, and the ability to have veto power. Like, what did that
they have
deal look like?
no voting rights, no power,
Okay.
no nothing. Yeah.
Okay.
So that's just they have a percentage of the company, and if I actually go raise a priced equity round, then it'll turn into actual equity type of thing.
Gotcha. Okay.
So, some safes are like, it's like some safes are like with a cap. And it has to, within like 2 years, you have to be able to raise like an actual price round.
Gotcha.
So for it to convert, or you have to start paying back the loan. But that's not how mine is structured. It's just like the safe, you get the money. And then once I do raise the price round, if I ever do, then it converts into like that actual,
Gotcha.
stock
Okay.
type of thing.
And your safe doesn't give them the power to veto or inhibit you from doing a round without their approval.
Yeah, no.
It's all still there.
Yeah.
So you're still very much in control.
Yeah,
Well,
absolutely.
but you have another investor. We referenced him earlier,
Mm-hmm.
Andrew Satoris.
Mm-hmm.
You know him really well. I've met him a couple of times and had some great conversations with him.
Very smart guy.
Really smart guy, very successful entrepreneur.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously someone who's not just money and a little bit of advice, but someone who can really help you
Mm-hmm.
expand vision,
Mm-hmm.
walk through things that he's been through before. What's that experience like? When did he make an investment, and how has that impacted your company?
So he made an investment late last year, like December, like or in early January. And I had been working with him for a couple years at that point, just like not consistently, but just like kind of going back and forth. And like if I need something, he's there, and he'd always be willing to hop on a call and ask questions. I would go up to his office every now and then, just like get work done. Sometimes I just go and sit in there, and that's what I met you that one time.
Yeah.
Just from sitting in there trying to get some stuff done, and yeah, and I had just from a few $1,000s in sales, all the way up to we're doing bigger months, and I
Yeah.
just kind of kept him in the loop as things going on. And then when the opportunity presented itself, he had offered to kind of help me out, and very, very impactful. I think Andrew is just one of those things. It's like he has a huge contact of people. He's kind of been there, done that. So a lot of the issues and situations that I go through or have questions about, he has firsthand experiences, or he's going through with his own business. Obviously, he's in the tech sector, so he's not like in direct to consumer and knows all the ins and outs of direct to consumer. But the overarching of like how to run, how to operate, how to manage people, how to think about growth, is all there. And he's very strategic and surgical about the things that he thinks about, and that's kind of how I want to be as well. And also, just kind of talked about how you talked about like vision. I think just knowing the possibility of things that are out there and how some people can be so organized and so well thought out. Like he's thinking 10 years ahead, and he's got a whole plan that's laid out. I mean, we listened to him talk when he was talking about how he's going to scale his entire business. Maybe it happens, maybe it doesn't, but just the way that he thinks about getting things done, where it's like, oh, I'm going to be doing a couple $1 billion a year, and it's just for
Billion
him,
with
yeah.
a B. With
And-
a B.
Yeah, and for him,
okay?
it's just talking about just casual conversation.
Yes.
And it's just like, obviously, of course I'm going to get there. Like, this is how we're going to do it. It's exactly how it's laid out. And most people just don't think like that. And it's not to any fault of their own. I just think it's like part of circumstance where most people are not exposed to those types of things. And me growing up, I was never exposed to somebody who really thinks that big, and somebody who's actually been able to achieve, levels to these things.
Yeah.
So being able to see that somebody can actually do it, and then actually have a plan to get there, allows your mind to be like, I'm thinking way too small right now. How can I think
Yes.
like, okay, this is what I'm doing, but how can I 10x this? And then I can just sit down and like plan out the steps to actually have a plan to go and get there. Maybe it works, maybe it doesn't, but just I think having the mindset of like, oh, it's absolutely achievable, gets you half of the battle, just like thinking that and knowing that you can do it. And obviously you got to be tactical to do the stuff, get the work done, but that's never going to change. You got to be able to think that you can do it as well too. And I think that's a huge part of, why I'm able to do some of the things that I do, is just because I have a really strong mindset one myself. And I just think I can really do anything that I set my mind out to do.
You got a mentor who's been there, done that.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, it's funny
So
because there was a time in my life when someone who nonchalantly talked about hundreds of thousands would have blown my mind. Like nonchalant. Then you get people that are talking nonchalantly about millions, and it goes to 10 to millions, and it goes to billions. And that's where your mentor is casually talking about a 10-year vision of being the size of Airbnb, $250 billion. No big deal.
Yeah, no
I'm going to
big deal.
get there.
Yeah, nothing.
When you get around vision like that, it makes you want to see the world a lot bigger and expand what you think is possible.
Absolutely.
And that's, I think, the point for your company. And when I sat down with the two of you, it's lip balms and lotions and creams today, but I know if you're exposed to someone like your mentor, you're already thinking so much bigger now about what it could be in the future too.
Absolutely.
I mean, that's such an important part. Let's jump in and talk about this concept of burning the boats, because there's a lot of people who are out there, and I'm going to pick on the Black community a little bit here too, because we're both Blacks, we can talk about it. So let's have a conversation around this. They tend to have a bit of victim mentality and a victim outlook, and not always take personal responsibility for the control. And look at someone like you, successful Black entrepreneur, someone like me, and they say, well, did you know you got lucky, right? Like you had okay, you built this from scratch in a dorm room. Where's the luck? You could make the argument to me that you meeting this investor who talks about billions, it's a lucky outbreak that gets you into a mindset, but you were already in the kitchen cooking at that point. So the people in this community that say things to me like, dude, I just got to quit my job. I need my back to be against the wall, so I'll be motivated to work on my business and work as hard as I see you working. And I'm sure you've had people the same way that say things to you about, dude, you're so passionate about this, but I got this job I have to do because I have these responsibilities. What do you say to these people that say that they need to have their back against the wall in order to get this done?
That maybe you might not make it. I mean, I feel like there's a lot of, not excuses, but it's just like, oh, I see I'm doing this, so I can't put time into this. I can't do this because something else is holding me back, or I'm around this group of people, so they're not allowing me to do this. I feel like that's all circumstantial, and like you set the circumstances that you want to get the things done that are really important to you. And if you want something to be important to you, as I want to grow a business so I can make an extra $100K a month, and you kind of talk about it, but you don't put the necessary steps in to do so, then what are we really doing? You know what I mean? I mean, you can say I'm lucky, and I think there's a factor of luck that comes in, but I think part of the reason is just I've kind of in those rooms or those spaces where I've allowed myself to get lucky type of thing. Like I put in the work to finish a product. I put in the work to try to build a website. I put in the work to reach out to influencers. So sure, I might get lucky that a influencer posts us and we make 10K in a day. And you might say I'm lucky because this influencer posted us. And that might be true, but all the stuff that I did to get up to this point is not necessarily lucky. It's just me putting in the work to get there. And sure, some of the things might shake out where it might be a little bit more luck than just, a data-driven decision type of thing or a circumstance thing, but you have to put in the effort to get there, and you'll focus on the things that you truly think that are important. You can always there's always more time in the day to get the things done that you want to get done, but you just have to figure out how to prioritize those for yourself. So that's kind of what I say.
People, they don't actually have the desire. A lot of times, I think, is a good way to sum it up. They say they want to have the business that's doing hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars a month, but they're not willing to put in the work to actually make it happen. And it's a lot easier to just make up excuses of why you can't do it and why somebody else got lucky. Because if they don't admit that you got lucky or tell themselves that, they got to look in the mirror and realize, shit, like, do I really want it? Do I want what I say I want? I think in e-commerce specifically, all the work is up front. You have to do so much in preparation to make your product for years. Then you're making a Shopify store. Then you're making ads. And guess what? Nobody sees them. And you don't sell anything. But I think that long before you got lucky and got hooked up with an investor or got someone to post your page, you did all that work up front that nobody sees. It's easy for them to say it's luck. You're like, no, dude, I worked my ass off for this.
Absolutely.
Literally worked my ass off for this. Okay, I want to shift a little bit and talk about scaling up, because you went from solopreneur to entrepreneur. You've got a team now that's literally running a massive manufacturing operation right here in Las Vegas. 5 people there on site. You've got a content team of contractors from all over the world. If you could go back to no team, no employees, no contractors, what would you do differently knowing that you want to get to where you are right now?
Maybe just being a little bit more consistent in the efforts that I'm doing to make this business grow. For me, I'm a very focused person, but I can be focused for a very short amount of time, and running this business has forced me to be focused for a lot longer period of time. So I'll kind of get in sometimes ruts where I'll be like, okay, I'm really motivated for a couple of months, and then it might dive off a little bit, and then sales will dive as well. So then I kind of have to get myself back into gear. I think that comes from me being young. I don't want to make excuses, but me being young and kind of wanting to try a bunch of different things versus trying to focus on what's really going to put, I guess, my career and goals at the forefront as well, trying to figure out where I want to be. But I would say probably being more consistent around the content that I'm creating. I think the world that we're in right now revolves around content. There are so many things that you can do with it, and it can grow a business. It can grow your audience. The only reason we're sitting here now is so we can get people to, communicate online, build a community, things of that nature, or speak about the things that we're learning and working about. So spending more time being intentional about the content, and then probably being more data-driven around some of the decisions that I make for the business on a financial level, and then making decisions around, what types of content works or what types of products work, maybe just a little bit more spine. Trying not to focus on growing too fast, but making sure my fundamentals are really, really strong, like around finance, product development, understanding your cash flows and things like that are really, really important. And then learning how to build systems and, be an effective leader, things of that nature. Probably would spend a little bit more time on like the basics, the true basics. I feel like a lot of people overlook those and just kind of see like, I'm here, somebody's here making a couple $100,000 a month. Like what I got to do to get there as fast as possible. Like try to focus on just building a sound, good, profitable business. Like you don't have to scale to millions of dollars in a year and, not know how you got there. Focus on really just like, I know how this works. I know how this works. I know how this works. I know how every facet of my business revolves. And then that's going to make it, 10 times easier if you want to scale up operations. You need to plug somebody in here. You need to plug somebody in there. You know exactly how that operation works. You know exactly how long it takes to make a tube of chapstick or to fill up a tray or clean up stuff. So then when you pass it off to somebody else, there's not like that miscommunication. There's no lack of expectations or accountability because everybody knows how everything works. And it can make things a lot smoother, I guess, down the line. So just being really intentional about
that's some gold right there. And no one can listen to what you just said about what you do differently and be like, oh, he got lucky.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, no. Did you hear what he just said? Okay. Like the lessons that are learned there. And every entrepreneur I talk to, we talk about the fact that I could get back to where I am today so much faster if I knew what I knew today to get there. You talk about KPIs, motivation, consistent content. That right there, motivation is one of your KPIs right now. Consistent content is one of your KPIs. And if you know that that's a trigger for your business and you have an idea in mind of where you want to get to, it's just so powerful for you to know that and to be able to track that, to do it next time around. We already bled into this a little bit, but advice for aspiring entrepreneurs, for the people who aren't out there saying, oh, he got lucky. People who are just saying, you know what? I want to do that too. I want to be an entrepreneur. I want to work for myself. I want to build something that has meaning, that has a mission behind it, that has a brand to go along with it. What advice do you have for them beyond what you just said of the first step to get started? Something actionable for them of like, what can they be doing today?
Try a bunch of different things and not be afraid for it not to work. I think it's a huge mindset thing. We can sit here and talk about tactics all day long, but once you get into the weeds of actually running the business, you're gonna have to figure those out anyway. And somebody can tell you a bunch of different stuff, but until you really do it and grasp it for yourself, it might just kind of go over your head. And there's a bunch of different types of content out there to help you build any aspect of your business. You got a thing you want to learn about making content, there's videos on that. You want to learn about understanding finance and cash flow, there's a video on that. You want to understand suppliers and supply chain, there's videos on that. I think the biggest, I think it's really a mental hurdle type of thing. I think a lot of people are afraid to fail. I think a lot of people are afraid of how they'll look to other people if something doesn't work. Or they're just afraid of, what it will look like if it does work and I have to change my whole lifestyle to fit this one thing. Maybe try not to put so much pressure on one specific idea or one thing, because I feel like if you put too much energy to something, it doesn't work. It kind of causes your motivation to completely die off and you may never pick it back up. And so until you get to a point where maybe you have a product, you have a few units that you can actually start selling, don't be afraid to try a different bunch of ideas, learn how to make a product, do something, make content, because all these things go into running a business. And once you have that mindset around like, okay, I tried this, it didn't work, I'm going to take the data that I learned from this and apply it to something else. I think that's huge, because I think, not that I'm giving a knock on school, but they don't really teach you how to fail. And I think that's a really important lesson. It's more like you're going to memorize all this stuff so you can get a good grade in the test, and then you're going to move on and not necessarily forget that past stuff, but you're not really going to use it potentially maybe for the next lesson that you're learning. It might be something completely different. And I think it's important for you to get into that concept of just like, you need to try, fail, learn, repeat, try, fail, learn, repeat, try, fail, learn, repeat. And once you kind of get into that mindset of just like, if it doesn't work, that's fine. I'm going to learn something from it and I can apply it to the next thing. It'll get you a lot more motivated to just be like, I'm going to try to learn as many things as possible until I figure out something that sticks. Because once I get to that point, I know I might have something that's actually, that's actually good. So
Yeah.
I think it's for me, I try to, mindset is really, really important to me. And I think that allows you to do a lot of the things that might seem out there or make them more, actionable and like mundane to us type of thing. So getting your mindset to a point where you think you can achieve some of these big things, I think is a huge part of the battle.
The belief, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Let me ask you about this because a lot of people would find it almost rudimentary because they've heard this before of, oh, when you fail, you get closer to a solution. But why are we still so afraid to fail?
That's a good question. I think a lot of people look at like, themselves with like they fail, I'm not good enough, or they look at, if I try something, put myself out there, like I want to try building this business and it doesn't work, how are people going to think about, what happens or what I did? And I would think like that as well. Like if it, how does Kobe's look to the outside person? Or if it doesn't work, then what are people going to think? Because, I dropped out of school, I did this, like, what are people going to think? And at the end of the day, like, that doesn't really matter. Like the people that are going to support you are always going to support you no matter like really what happens. So just have a good base on, what you think is possible, and then have a good group of people around you that can, one, support you as well, and, be understanding when things may not go your way, or when they do go your way. I think it's really, really important. But I think it kind of comes from a little bit of inside of maybe a little bit of insecurity and just like, maybe I'm not smart enough to do this. Maybe I don't know what I'm doing. I think that's a lot of it too as well. It's like, everybody's like, I want to start something, but like I don't know what to do. And I'm just always like, you just got to start. Like I didn't know what I was doing either. And I feel like I still don't know what I'm doing half the time. You just got to get in there and be willing to figure it out. I think that's a huge thing. So you just kind of have to figure out how to get over that.
You show me the entrepreneur that feels like he knows what he's doing. She knows what she's doing. They don't really exist. Like everybody's kind of flying by the seat of their pants.
Absolutely.
But I'll say this too. For anyone who's going to laugh at you when your business fails, like get that person out of your life
Anyway,
in the first place.
yeah.
They don't care about you.
100%.
If you fail in your business, first of all, I don't find that funny, but I also, as an entrepreneur, look at that and say, man, the next one, you're going to kill it
You're gonna
because
crush.
of this failure.
Because you know exactly what happened or what went wrong, and you're not going to do that in the next thing.
That's why I think it's so important, the people you surround yourself with, your mentors and your friends and who they become, that like you get the haters out of there. People aren't in your circle, because this whole idea of failure, as it is not fail and then you become a failure. It's fail and learn, fail, learn, and get better. And if we had time to go through and talk about what you do on Facebook, and we don't, that I know is also iteration, trial, error, failure, A/B testing. One wins, one fails. You do more than one that wins. It's such a great concept that I think people can take away from this is just get started.
Just get started.
Be okay to fail. There's nothing wrong with that whatsoever at all.
Or not know what you're doing. That's completely fine.
Yeah.
Half of us don't know what we're doing.
Exactly.
Most people don't know what they're doing. So just
Ask anyone that you think knows what they're doing, and they'll tell you that they have no idea.
Exactly. I'm just doing.
Yeah. I love it. We got to stop right there, dude. Like that is a great way for us to stop.